What's up, witches?
Hello there, and welcome.
So today is a very special episode because of the fact that Samhain is right around the corner.
It is indeed, as is, of course, Halloween, and All Souls Day, All Martyrs Day, and All Saints Day, which All Martyrs Day and Saints Day became the same day, and then All Hallows Eve.
Yes. So today is all about
Halloween.
and Samhain and all those other random things.
Yes. So, let me first say that in researching this, and I already had my opinion of Halloween and the various American holidays. Well, that seems kind of low. You can fix that. Yes. Okay. And the Wheel of the Year, which you see behind us, that I now do not agree with. So, we'll get into that. What I don't agree with is the placement.
Okay.
Because Yule is set as the first and primary at the top. When in fact, Samhain is the celebration of the ending of their year and beginning of a new year. So in my chronological mind, it should be at the top. But I digress. So let's begin with the fact that Samhain, Samhain, is not pronounced Samhain.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Supernatural.
Yeah.
It is not Samhain, it's Samhain.
She was telling me about that earlier.
Samhain.
She had such an issue with Sam calling Samhain Samhain. Now I get it because of American vernacular.
Well, and it's not even that, though. I mean, I get it because as a solitary practitioner who had never heard some of these words pronounced, originally I was thinking the same way, but then eventually I heard it pronounced and was like, how? But then realized it was like Old Irish or Gaelic or Celtic or whatever.
Yes.
So they have funny pronunciations according to English.
And actually, if you want to get technical, according to Scottish Gaelic, which was also part of Irish Gaelic, because they're all in the same region, Samhain was pronounced Sav-in, like seven, but it was split, Seven. So let's get further into the pronunciation, just for a brief moment. It's not Samhain.
No.
The most prominent and most used pronunciations of it is Samhain, like a sow, S-O-W, and in, Samhain, or Samhain, and they can be used
Interchangeably.
Thank you. I was having a moment for that word. But they can be used interchangeably, and they mean the same thing, as does Sav-in. Now, Samhain or Samhain is one of the 8 Sabbats in the Wiccan calendar, as displayed in the back, or High Holy Days. All right, there are 8 days that are extremely important to Wiccans, and then there's others that are added in, like the equinoxes and all of that stuff. But we're talking about Samhain right now. Recently, there has been a published book or paper on the fact that the Celts, which is where Samhain came from, it came from the Irish Celts. Now, I say Irish Celts, however, that encompasses. Yeah, I was wondering because you said you wanted to put your hair down for the.
Continue.
I'm just looking at your beauty as you unfurl your gorgeous hair. So, what was I saying?
I don't know. Something about Samhain?
Yes. Samhain can be traced back now historically to about 4000 BCE.
Which means before Common Era.
Where originally the Celts were only thought to go back about 2000 years. Well, not 2000, but 2000 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
It is now believed, based on findings that they found, that Samhain goes back even farther than the Celts. Now, the concept of celebrating the harvest and honoring the dead goes back much farther than our written history acknowledges, because there are many that believe that the human race only has been around 6,000 years according to the Bible. Roughly 6,000 years. However, the Sumerian and Babylonian civilizations squashed that completely because they were around long before the biblical age. So it is estimated that Samhain, specifically Samhain, dates back about 6,000 years, which is 4000 BCE. I like that, personally, because it identifies that it is of the old religions. The purpose for Samhain. So we won't get into the old times of what it may or may not have meant or when it started, based on my thoughts, and just going off of the research that I found from multiple books and resources besides the books. So the purpose for Samhain was to celebrate the last harvest, because around mid to late October was the final harvest of the year. Out of 3, there were 3 harvests, and this was the final. So it was meant as a celebration for the last harvest. More importantly, or equally important, was that it was the celebration of the end of the year and welcoming the new year. See, in ancient times, they didn't separate seasons like we do. It was either summer or winter, period. That's it. Summer, winter. There were no others. There was, the time when you let your animals out to roam freely, you let them loose from the protection of what we today call a barn, and let them roam freely to eat of the grass that was growing and just be themselves. And then there was the time of the cold death, where they brought everything in to keep it protected and warm. But again, it was a time to say goodbye to the old and hello to the new, basically. They used it to honor their ancestors and loved ones that have passed on. As SOW-in implies, with its name in English translation, which is summer's end, it was the end of summer and beginning of winter. Granted, winter didn't generally start for another month or so, but it started getting cooler.
Winter as they saw it.
Right, winter as they saw it. It got cooler. The days were shorter. The nights were longer. It was also a time of reflection. I mean, again, the new year. What do we do in the new year? We reflect on the past year and project hopes for the coming year. Like, what is that they call it?
Resolutions?
Yes, resolutions. Fucking hate those things. So, yeah. It was also a means of coming to terms with death, but at the same time, the celebration of life. Because in ancient times, life wasn't linear. It was, is the word cyclical? It just kept going.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the right word. It just repeats itself. Death brings about new birth. I mean, they lived by the natural law. Things die into winter, in the winter. Before there was SOW-in, and I'm trying not to get off topic too much, before there was SOW-in and the Druids that ran the Celtic society, which actually didn't happen until around 1500 or so. Druids only were around 500 years. Before the Druids and all of that, there were shamans, and just because it was a shaman does not mean it wasn't a woman. The religious teachers and healers could be male or female. They worshipped the sun god and the earth goddess. During winter time, the goddess died, the sun god died in their terms because the days got colder, the sun wasn't out as much, and the earth was blanketed in snow, and there was no life per se. And then spring brought about new life, the rebirth of the sun god, the rebirth of the goddess, and yeah, it's all very, because the sun god was actually the child of the mother goddess, and then he died, and then came back and brought about the life of the goddess, the rebirth of the goddess, and then they had a child.
It's all symbolic, not incestuous.
Yes, it's very symbolic, and though it's not incestuous, it is.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. Our primitive peoples didn't know anything other than the natural world, nature. They didn't have any other knowledge. So anyway, they would use this time period to come to terms with death, but celebrate the life of that person or people. A lot of times during SOW-in celebrations, they would do various divinations to communicate with the dead or the divine, trying to bring about protection or divine what's going to happen to the tribe or community in the coming months of winter. Winter was very hard. It's not like it is for us today. Although winter can be difficult, it wasn't life-threatening. I mean, unless you're homeless. It's not life-threatening like it was back then. Winter was hard. And then, again, as I mentioned earlier, it was the end of summer and beginning of winter. Going back to, again, they had 2 seasons, summer and winter. Some of the customs of Samhain were, first of all, everybody on what we call the 31st of October, because Samhain was actually on November 1st. They would all put out their fires in their homes. And a sacred bonfire, as well as many other bonfires. I've read things where it described a circle of bonfires. Now, it didn't specify where the sacred bonfire was, but I would anticipate it would either be in the center of the circle of bonfires or somewhere off to the side.
It was in the center.
Like I said, I didn't find anything that specified that, but that would make sense to me. So they put out all fires within the home, built the bonfires and a sacred bonfire. It began on nightfall of the 31st. It was a 3-night celebration, beginning on the evening of the 31st. Plates of food were placed at the table for dead ancestors. Plates of food were also, or treats, what they called treats, breads and things like that, were left out for souls that didn't have any place to go. Dancing, stomping of their feet to create that rhythmic feel. Costumes made out of animal hides and animal heads. Interestingly, the purpose for the costumes initially and originally was to protect the wearer. So if you were to leave your home at night, let's say to go visit a friend or a side chick, you would have to dress in a costume to protect yourself from the evil spirits that are separated from families, or any evil spirits, not just humanoid evil spirits. Like, you would have to disguise yourself, and that was the purpose of costumes, to disguise yourself from the evil spirits that were trying to do you harm, the trick part. And of course, the plates left out for lost souls would be the treat part. We'll go back to that later. Telling stories of the deceased, like, funny stories or things that they did to help or save someone. They would often, neighbors would do fortune telling for neighbors. They also sacrificed livestock and crops. So it wasn't just about bloodletting. Their sacrifice was all-encompassing of both aspects. They needed livestock and the earth. Where's all this hair coming from? Freaking cat. You don't see the floating hair.
Too busy looking at you.
Anyway, so sacrifices were made, and then at the end of the festivities, each person or each family would take either an ember or a stick from the sacred fire and relight the fires within their home. This would obviously present them with warmth, but it was believed that using the sacred bonfire would help perpetuate protection or give protection within the home. Sometimes from some of the research I've done, that we've done, sometimes the sacred bonfire was up to 12 miles away from the community. Like they were so tight-knit that the individual communities would have their own thing going on, but then the quote religious leaders would have the sacred bonfire going some distance away, and the celebrations would go from community to the main and then back. It's quite fascinating, and that's quite the abbreviated version. Like, there is actually a lot more information out there than you could imagine about early Halloween and Samhain practices. And now, going into Halloween, from humble beginnings of Samhain. Halloween has become the second or third most popular holiday in America. Now, when I say second or third, it depends on who you ask. According to the polls that I looked up, Halloween is third for those that they asked of the older generation: Christmas, Thanksgiving, and then Halloween. But then a poll that specifically targeted millennials, go figure, it was Christmas and Halloween, number 1 and number 2. Halloween actually is the second largest holiday commercially. $6 billion in candy and other things are sold during the Halloween season, so making it the second largest commercial holiday that there is. So now I digress a little bit. Do you want to continue?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can go ahead. You're doing great. What?
Okay. Samhain changed and evolved as people migrated around the world. You know, we're talking 2000 BC, 1000 BC. People were migrating all over. And as they did, they spread their beliefs and also incorporated the local beliefs. Then you have the whole imperial occupation of lands, like the Roman Empire. By like somewhere around 50 BC, AD or CE. Just fucking AD and BC. Why does it have to be all this CE and BCE? It's the same shit. Anyway, the Roman occupied the Celtic regions, which included the Welsh lands, Ireland, northern France, and Scotland, and maybe one other that I might be missing. But that was the Celtic Empire, and they were viewed as barbarians and wicked, just because it wasn't a civilization like Rome. So from about 50 CE with the Roman occupation and rule of Europe, they introduced 2 additional festivals to Samhain. One was the Festival of Feralia, which is a festival to honor the dead. Go figure. That sounds familiar with something the Celts were doing with Samhain. And the other was a festival to honor Pomona. Pomona was the goddess of fruits and trees. One of her fruits, or one of the fruits associated with her, were apples. Remember that I mentioned that for later. For the most part, the Celtic society accepted Christianity. I mean, it was either that or die at the sword. But they still maintained many of their beliefs. They maintained Samhain. They continued to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not acknowledge, but practice Samhain. Around 610. Now, I am abbreviating all of this like you have no idea. Again, there is so much information out there. Please don't just listen to the clergy. Please don't listen to rhetoric. Do your own research. So anyway, around 610, I think, Pope Boniface established All Martyrs' Day, which was May 13th. Then around 835, Pope Gregory IV included All Saints' Day as part of All Martyrs' Day. So they wanted to acknowledge and give praise to all saints and martyrs. Known and unknown was the wording that they used. And then Gregory moved that celebration to November 1st, which became All Hallows' Day, because the martyrs and the saints were hallowed. So the 31st was considered All Hallows' Eve. Now, around 1000 CE, All Souls' Day was created, and that was to honor the dead, and that was on November 2nd. So what started out originally as Samhain, a 3-day festival celebrating our ancestors, celebrating the last harvest, celebrating the community, and sharing what they had, turned into All Hallows' Eve, All Hallows' Day, and All Souls' Day. Not that the Catholic Church was trying to integrate the pagans into the church or anything like that. Around the same time, sacrifices were eliminated, and instead, the people, instead of offering sacrifices to the deities, they offered prayers to God for the benefit of their people, their families, and their community. Interestingly enough, All Souls' Day, which was November 2nd, was celebrated much like Samhain. There were bonfires, there were parades, and there were costumes. And also, during that time period, there was a period where the poor would go, and this is in Europe, England specifically, the poor would go from door to door and ask for coins or cakes, and that's where the soul cake came into being during this time period. Now, move forward a little bit. about 500 years or so, English have colonized America. For Samhain and for Halloween, that was a difficult time. We'll say it was late 15 and early 1600s. The Protestant movement had taken hold hardcore, especially in the Americas, and basically erased Sav-in. Like, there was no what's what I'm looking for, overt mention of or celebration of Samhain, but yet they still had an autumn festival to celebrate the harvest. Curious. Many colonial Halloweens, and now every state was looked at. Now, when I tell you there's a lot of freaking info out there, okay? Every colonial state or colony, because they weren't really states at that point,
right,
had their own belief system and idea of how to celebrate what would become Halloween. I'm not going to mention all of them because it's absurd how vastly different the colonies were in their beliefs on that. But the Protestant movement basically erased Samhain. Some of the things that they did in colonial times were ghost stories, and they enacted mischief. Now, some of the mischief that I found that they did would be things like, and remember, we didn't have cars, horse and buggy. So they would dismantle and disassemble a buggy and then reassemble it on the roof of your barn or your house. So you had a full-on fucking carriage on your roof the morning of November 1st. That's just one example of some of the mischief. I find that fucking hilarious. Personally, I think that's fucking awesome. But yet I could see how, colonials didn't really get a kick out of that. I'm drawing a blank.
okay.
Did you want to add anything to it?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the ghost stories and the mischief. They
Right.
had their autumn festivals.
And then as time progressed, now one of the things I did not mention is during the medieval times, going back to Pomona, bobbing for apples. That's a fun Halloween game that we do at parties, right? So I bet you didn't know that the original premise of bobbing for apples was for a young maiden to find her husband. Every apple in the barrel, or whatever the frick they were using, signified a different man in the community that was single. Now, the research that I did not specify how they determined which bachelor was attached to what apple, but the young maiden would bob for apples, and whatever apple she pulled out identified the man that she would be with. Of course, some would say that may have been practice for head, but I mean, I don't know. You got to take her hair, and then she's going down like this to get an apple. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm stating the obvious. No, but seriously, Um, that was how she determined who she was going to be with. And then you have caramel covered apples and candy covered apples. So you can see how Pomona, the festival for Pomona, has been brought into modern times, Halloween.
Oh, there was another one.
What's that?
That also involved apples.
Okay.
If the young woman, the maiden, so to speak, peeled the apple in one piece and let the peel fall on the ground, whatever letter the peel resembled would be the first initial of her loved one's first name.
Okay.
So, like, if she, peeled it and it fell on the ground and it resembled an R, you're looking at Richard, Robert,
Well,
whatever.
hopefully it wasn't a Q and it's Quasimodo.
Quinn.
Mine was funnier.
Mm-hmm. Well, you do tend to be funnier than me. Anyway, moving forward.
Depraving comments do not go well. Whatever. So, little tidbit about bobbing for apples. It's an interesting thought. And when I found the whole festival dedicated to Pomona and her main fruit, or one of her fruits that was for her, were apples, I was like, oh, that explains a lot with that. Because I honestly always wondered, how the fuck does bobbing for apples, or how is bobbing for apples identified with Halloween? So we'll fast forward a little bit because, a lot of the information again about the different colonies, and, of course, then there was also the Civil War, which probably put a damper on festivities. We'll go to the, we'll stick with the 1800s, right around just before the Civil War, maybe just after. There were lots of autumn festivals, but very few Halloween festivities. Although during the second half of the 1800s, because of the Great Potato Famine, huge numbers of Irish immigrants came to the United States, along with others too, and they brought their belief systems with them. But the Irish brought with them the idea of SOW-in, the concept and celebration of SOW-in, which is what this is all rooted on. The late 1800s, Halloween was made to be like a community thing. They tried to remove the ghosts and ghouls and make it about community and celebration, and they played games, kind of like bobbing for apples again. They did parties. They presented food of the season, kind of like we did with Samhain in the ancient times.
Right.
And dressed up in costumes. Usually saints, angels, and devils. Those were the three primary. Between 1920 and 1950, trick-or-treating was established and or reinstated. And the idea was, if you take care, because it was focused more towards the kids. Now it's almost reversed. It's gone back to focus, like, adults have more fun with Halloween than kids do. like adults enjoy dressing up the kids. They enjoy dressing up their pets. Do you know, what was it? And I know that it does not signify modern spending, but 2010, Americans spent $500 million on pet costumes. Pet costumes. Going back to it being the second largest commercial holiday in the United States. It's a $6 billion industry, but at its roots are celebration of life, celebration of death, celebration of the wheel of life. And now I'll go back to this. So my disagreement with the wheel of life as it currently exists is Yule is at the top. Got Yule, Imbolc, Austera, Beltane, Litha, Lammas, Mabon, and Samhain. But if Samhain is the proper New Year,
should it not be up there?
It should be at the top. Like, we recognize Christmas as the end and the beginning of the new year. End of the past year, beginning of the new year. Basically. I mean, it's by 5 days, 6
Right.
days. But that's not how it was in ancient times. Yule was secondary. Samhain was the primary. And after all the research I did on this, I was like, well, what the frick? I'm not a big fan of that anymore.
Well, I mean,
But it works. It works. I'm just saying, like, what?
you also have to take into account the fact that our calendar, the pagan calendar, was subverted by the Catholic Church.
Well, most
They absorbed our practices into their religion
Mhm.
as a way of getting our people to convert quietly.
if they killed everybody off, then they'd have nobody to give them coins.
But their biggest holiday is their so-called birth of Christ, which they subverted our birth of the sun god.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just that. Oh, we're going to be getting into all the holidays, I assure you. But not just that, but there was also an Egyptian god that was born on December 25th. Not many people know about that.
Right, because the horned god was supposed to have been born on December 21st, and was it Osiris
I think
that
so.
was born on the 25th?
I think so.
But, you know, they tried to combine all of that with the birth of Christ, which I'm sorry, but he was born in March. Okay? But yeah, I mean, that Yule being at the top
Mhm.
is basically probably part of the subversion of the
Yeah.
Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Because to them it's their most important.
Well, what's also interesting is Imbolc is also called Candlemas,
Yes.
which was just another. Oh, and that's another thing. It was Halloween was also called
Hallowmas.
Hallowmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so Ostreda is Easter. Beltane,
Mayday.
May Day.
Litha is basically midsummer. Lammas is in August. Also known as Lunasa.
First harvest.
Yes, first harvest. Mabon is second harvest, which is also like the pagan Thanksgiving. And then, of course, you have Samhain.
Which is the new year.
Yes.
So, I hope I did Halloween some justice. It is a rich holiday with so much power behind it and so much love and reverence for the ancestors, as well as Mother Earth. We invite you to do your research. There is a lot of information out there. Like, I had a hard time putting all of this together in just six hours altogether, 5 hours. There's a lot out there. If you are Wiccan or curious, or if you're one of those that are like, this just doesn't make sense, it doesn't add up. And I love the question that I've heard or seen, is Halloween pagan or Christian? Yes. It's both. They assimilated our traditions to match their own, to try to assimilate the populace. Things like I love this one, and I don't remember the time frame, but at some point in history during Halloween, you could pay the church to help move an ancestor or a loved one from purgatory to heaven.
Don't they have to do that on their own?
The church was about money, power, and control. So if you paid a priest, they would speak on behalf of your loved one to get them out of purgatory. Now, purgatory is not hell.
No, purgatory is the in-between, where you're not quite sure where you're going to go.
Right. So they were so afraid of being stuck in between and being a spirit walking the earth,
right,
that they would pay the priesthood, the church, to help their ancestors out of purgatory. But yet the Catholic Church isn't about money or power or control.
And apparently they're not about witchcraft either, even though they use our own techniques against us.
Oh yeah, they're all about witchcraft. I mean, the burner that they're waving back and forth as they're walking up the
incense,
sage or incense, cleansing the air. Give me a fucking break. Transmuting a piece of bread or wine to the blood of a deity. I mean, that was long before the Catholic Church. Anyway, I hope I didn't confuse you or didn't make it worse, but and our casts will get better. Like, I am going to start in the next week or so, I'm going to start working on Thanksgiving, because you would be amazed of the actual history of Thanksgiving. Not to mention Christmas, and again, like we mentioned, Easter and all of that. So we'll be doing a special podcast or recording for each one of the holidays, except probably 4th of July, because I don't really know of any pagan orientations to that's strictly an American thing.
Right.
And maybe Memorial Day and Labor Day, unless they fall close to a holiday. But yeah, we'll be doing lots more of these. I hope you guys have a wonderful Halloween. I wish you the very best and happiest Samhain. And blessed be.
Peace out, witches.
Peace out, witches.